Let's try to build this clock with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Alrighty, so welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Reza, and in this video, we're gonna see how we can build this clock with just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Before starting, I want you to like this video and subscribe to my channel where I post content just like this. So at first, we're gonna set up our development environment. I'm gonna install some extensions. Feel free to skip this section if you have already done this. Search for Prettier and try to install this extension. I've already done it. Then search for Live Server to serve our HTML and CSS and JavaScript. It will reload the code as we save it. Then we're gonna go to the Files section. We're gonna create 3 files. First gonna be index.html. Then we're gonna create styles.css. And then we're going to create main.js file for the JavaScript. So let's start with the HTML. So I'm going to hit exclamation mark. It will generate this template for me. For now, I'm going to change the name to clock project and hit save. As you can see, when I hit save, it formatted my code. If you open settings in VS Code and search for format on save, make sure to check this checkbox and it will format the code whenever you save the code. Now, by Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P on Windows, search for Format Document With, click on that one, and click on Configure Default Formatter and press the Prettier extension that we just installed. This way, whenever you save your file, Prettier will format the code. For example, I changed something here and hit save, it will format the code. And the same is true for CSS and JavaScript. So let's start the code by adding a container div here. I'm going to create a div, add a class name of holder to it. So holder. Inside this div, I'm going to create a div with the class of clock. But this time I hit .clock and hit enter. It will create a div with the clock class on it. Inside the clock, I'm going to create another div with the class of circle. This circle is going to be the center of the clock where all needers start from. And by the way, you can do hashtag and something, it will create a div with the ID of that thing. So dot for class, hashtag for ID. Now we're going to create another div. This is going to be the clock needle or the needles that move inside a clock. And we're going to create 3 of them. One for hour and another for minute and seconds. So here we're going to duplicate this by just hitting Shift Alt down. It will create a duplicate of this to the down section. So hit that. It's going to duplicate down. So we're going to create another one and I'm going to change this to minute. And another one, I'm going to Shift Alt down. Another one for second. So save and it will format the code. Now down here you can see this go live button. Click on that. This will run the project on a specific port. So in the browser there's nothing. I'm going to add a text here for testing. It seems like working. Let's remove this. And we only have to link the CSS and JavaScript to the project and we're done with the HTML. Here I link my CSS. And down here, I'm going to link my script as a JavaScript code. First, I'm going to add box sizing with the border box value. This will help me in spacing. Then I'm going to add background color of white to the body. I'm also going to hide the overflow to prevent scrolling on the page. I'm going to target the holder, this holder element that we had in the HTML. I set the width to 100% to fill the whole width. Make the display of it set to flex. Justify content center. Align items center. So in here in HTML, you can see clock is inside this holder. So in CSS, I'm going to add the dot clock inside the holder. Width of 700 pixels. This is not arbitrary. I just use this width. Make the display a flex. We're going to set justify content center, align items center. Now, the important thing is that we set aspect ratio 1:1 because we want to create a circle. And circle must be a square with the border radius of 50% or more than that. Here we set border radius 50% with the aspect ratio 1:1. This will create a circle. Now I'm going to add a dark background to this. And here's the result. So far we have the circle with the dark background looking great. So getting back to HTML, here we have needles, but before that we have the circle. We can add common styles to all three of these needles. So let's select the circle inside the clock and we're going to set the width to 10 pixel, height 10 pixel, setting the background color to light coral, it's a light red, and obviously border radius of 50% to make it a circle. Position to absolute and z index of 2. We're gonna set it on top of the other needles. So there we go. We have this red circle in the middle. This is the circle that we have been working on. Let's jump to needles. Inside CSS, inside clock and beside circle, as you can see, circle and needles are beside each other. I'm gonna paste the clock needle, add some common styles here. Let's set width of 3 pixels, position absolute, height 40%. We're gonna override this for each needle. Background color of white. Again, we're gonna override this for each needle. And here we are. These are the needles. Now we can add specific styles for each needle. I'm gonna copy the hour and paste it here. And this is for minute. Paste it down. And lastly for the second. I'm gonna copy background color white to all of them. So now I change each one of them. The second one to green and last one to yellow. Let's add height to each one of them. This one is gonna be 35%, this one 20%. These are not arbitrary numbers. We can change it to anything we want. For example, I'm changing this to 20, this one to 35%, and this one to 50%. We will change this later as we want. For now, here's the result so far. Let's add rotate style to see how the needles will rotate as clock needles. For example, for testing, I'm adding some random degrees here. Here you can see that needles are rotated, and the rotation base is at the center of the needles. This is not something that we want. And for this, we're gonna add transform origin of bottom. This will set the rotation base on needles at the bottom of the needle. So let's open DevTools and try to inspect one of the elements. Here I inspect one of these needles, and here the rotate is in the properties section of the browser CSS. If we change this, we can visually see the rotation. And here I change the rotation degree for the minute and now for the second. Well, it seems like the base for the rotation is like 50% below the center. Let's disable rotation for one of the elements and add a transform to check this. Now, let's add a translate of Y for, let's go with like 1% and just change it from here. You can see it's moving down. Here at the 50%, you see that it matches the center, but it's the top of the needle, right? So if I add the rotation here And if I change it from here, you can see the center of rotation is the bottom of the needle. So we're going to change it to negative 50% for the translate. And now it moves to the center. So if we change the rotation, it works perfectly fine. And this is the value that we want. We're going to paste it to our code. And we're going to add it to the clock needle to add that to all three needles. And then we don't need these rotate anymore. We're going to remove that. And here's the result. It seems like the needles are a little bit higher. They go outside of the clock circle. And we're going to reduce a little bit of height. All right, so let's go ahead and reduce the height a little bit. And seems like we're done with the CSS. So the first thing to do in JavaScript is to select the needles. So first we're going to select the hour needle with the class name of clock needle _ hour, and do the same thing for minute and second needles. Let's log this to the console and check them out. So seems like there's no issues here. Now we're going to get the date from the date class we're instantiated. And on date, there are methods to get the hours and other stuff that we need. For example, here it says gets the hours and the date using local time. We're going to do the same thing for minute with the get minutes and seconds with the get seconds. Let's go ahead and access the style on second needle and add the transform to that. We're going to set the rotate on transform dynamically based on the date that we currently are. For now, let's set it to 20 degrees. And seems like the styles are working, but the translate that we set is not working. So back to the code, we're going to add the translate that we had. Now it seems like working correctly, but the second is not moving. Well, here we hard-coded the rotate to 20 degrees. We're going to set it dynamically based on the second that we have here. In order to do that, we're going to create an interval to update every second. So each second, this is going to be updated. Let's make the seconds dynamic and replace the 20 degrees with the seconds. Now, note that we have this interval here, and every second we have to update the seconds because we have the date outside of the interval, and each second we're going to increment the value for seconds. Now we have to change the const to let because we're going to overwrite the value, and we're going to do the same for minutes and hours. For minutes, each second we will add 1/60 to minutes. To memorize this better, remember, each 60 seconds is 1 minute. We're going to do the same for hours. Oops, seems like I made a mistake here in spell. Okay, for hours, we're going to add 1/3600. Each 3600 seconds is 1 hour. Jumping to the results, you can see the second is moving, but it's moving really slow. The reason for that is because we increment the seconds on every interval that happens each second, but it will increment each second 1 degree. Each 60 seconds needle does 1 revolution, but a circle is 360 degrees. We have to convert it in a way that each 360 degrees, it should do 1 full rotation. So circle is 360 degrees, so we have to convert that with this formula. The seconds needle moving as it should be. But we still have the problem with the needle's height. So let's inspect this needle and see how we can adjust the height in order to fit that into the clock. So I'm going to reduce the height of that value. So seems like 25 to 30% of height is looking good. So we're going to the CSS and we're going to change that. And accordingly, we can change the minute and hour needles as well. And it's working correctly. Now we can do the same for minutes and hours. Let me add a comment for seconds and add a comment for minutes. We're gonna change this to minutes needle and minute needle and change the transform based on the minutes value that we calculate. The formula will be the same because on each 60 minutes, it does a full revolution. So the formula is looking good for minutes. Duplicate this down and write this for hours. Here we set the hour needle. We change the minutes to hours. Instead of 60 seconds or 60 minutes, every 12 hours, the hour needle does a full revolution. So we have to change this to 12. Well, it's already looking great. We have a working clock. Last thing is change the colors. So we changed them back to white and second needle to light coral. Well, it's already looking great. We can add a transition. So to make this needle transform smooth, add transition to clock needle. So right now you can see I've added some transition and the needle is moving smoothly. And another thing is to make this clock centerized. So let's bring this clock to the center. We make the holder to fill the whole height. Alright guys, if this video was helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel for more content.